more to this recall election than how people feel about the job Gavin Newsom is doing.
While a recent poll shows the governor with a 53% approval rating, Newsom has not always been the most popular Democrat in the state. For more on that, I want to bring in LA Times political columnist George Skelton. George, it's so great to have someone who's covered the Golden State as long as you with us today, and I wanted to have your valuable perspective and experience here with us today. George, you wrote last month that Newsom's biggest problem in the recall election is likability. You said that he's likable one-on-one, but, quote, that chemistry doesn't come through in large groups or on TV. Just how big a factor is likability in today's election?
Not much, I don't think. What he was able to do, the governor, is switch the focus from himself to the Republicans' frontrunner, Larry Elder, who has a 3-decade-long record of right-wing rhetoric, provocative rhetoric that Newsom was able to use as an alarm to awaken snoozing Democrats to get them interested in the campaign.
And, I mean, is that what has swung things back in the governor's favor, the fact that a sort of leading Republican opponent emerged?
I believe so, sure. The choice came down to between Newsom, keeping Newsom, where people just felt sort of lukewarm about. They weren't wild about the guy. But in a very deeply blue state where Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1, those Democrats would not vote for a conservative Republican to be the next governor, particularly one who was against the minimum wage, who said he was going to throw out Newsom's mandates on masks and vaccinations. It made disparaging remarks about women over the years, was anti-abortion rights, anti-gun control, you name it. It did not fit California. And what he did do is appeal to the few remaining Republicans who are left in this state. So Newsom was able to make him the boogeyman in the campaign and take the focus on him.
Is that where the state of the Republican Party now in California, that they don't even try to appeal to a broader electorate at this point, that they just want to double down on dragging out their base? Or was this unique to the recall, knowing that at one time at least, you know, enthusiasm was much higher among Republicans and independent voters than it was among Democrats? And so maybe by saying or supporting things the former president might say or do, you could drive up Republican turnout and maybe catch Newsom.
Right. Well, I think you're right. You're right on your first point. I think Republicans have given up ever again electing a conservative, maybe even electing a Republican in the state. And they're just now, they like to gripe and sound off. And this recall was relatively easy to qualify for the ballot. They only needed 12% of the votes that were cast in the last gubernatorial election. They got an extra 4 months from a judge to collect those signatures that they needed because of the pandemic. And then Newsom did a couple of dumb things, like go to a very fancy, expensive restaurant with 12 of his good friends and lobbyists, and they did not wear masks and they ate inside. At the same time, he was telling the rest of Californians to stay away from crowds and stay away from big Thanksgiving dinners. So he came across as a real hypocrite in that, and that greatly propelled the signature gatherers. They picked up like 500,000 signatures overnight on that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just not hard anymore to put a recall measure on the ballot in California.
Do you think this chatter about possibly changing the way recalls are allowed to be called has legs, and it could result in changes in how the state conducts them potentially in the future?
Well, I would hope so, but I think, quite frankly, everybody's so tired of this recall talk that along about Thursday or Friday, nobody's going to be caring about any of it, including reforming the recall process. They should.
Yeah, no, I get it. You know, and then you got another election next year, of course, and Newsom presumably is on the ballot. Given how critical you are of him and the way he's comported himself, what do you think he's got to do to ensure himself a healthy reelection going into next year, other than perhaps just being a Democrat?
Keeping another Democrat from running against him in the primary. That's what he's got to do. Because I don't see any Republican out there who could win in November.
Is there another Democrat out there who would consider doing it?
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, look.
I think there's a lot of ways he can improve his governorship for sure. Put more emphasis on preventing these wildfires and putting them out. He cut the wildfire budget by $500 million this year for the fire season. Homelessness is ridiculous in California, and he keeps talking about it, but nothing seems to get done about it. Housing is way unaffordable for most middle-class families, young middle-class families today. And the problem is with that is tough regulations, high fees for building. He has to make it, we have to have more incentives for building homes in the state. And also have to learn like New York did at one time. You have to build up. You can't sprawl out like California has. But all these things are tough to do politically, except for the firefighting. I mean, that should be a slam dunk. But he could improve in those things. But it doesn't make much difference unless he gets caught in some big scandal or something. He'll win re-election next year.
Well, we'll see. But we appreciate George Skelton taking a few minutes to join us today. He's covered California politics for decades. He writes for the LA Times. George, enjoy watching tonight's results, and thank you for spending some time with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.